Welcome to the Driven to Succeed Real Estate Podcast, and today I have a special guest from eXp Realty, Candice Amundson. And Candice brings some great knowledge on the investment side. And I'm excited about this podcast today with you, Candice, because we're going to dive into some things that not many people know about real estate investing. Mm-hmm. And you've become somewhat of a little bit of a guru on this now, and digging into it more and more and showing some really good ways to get into investment and property investment.
Yeah, and the cool thing is that, I try to look at the different ways that you can build wealth. So when I meet my clients, even if they are first-time home buyers, I have that investor hat on. So I talk to them about purchasing their property as if it's a long-term game. And we talk about ways to do that, to build generational wealth, to build retirement wealth, to build your passive income, to really find ways that not everybody's doing it,
That passive income right there is kind of the biggest one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I did a little bit of research before this just to have some basic knowledge, because obviously, this is not the traditional form of investment property purchases.
Yeah.
When because we're going to get into self-directed IRA investing, right?
Yeah.
And I looked at it from a few different things, because obviously, we've talked about this with my tech company. You can even invest into technology companies with self-directed IRAs. And I was like, oh, well, that's fantastic. That's another way because we're raising funds right now. Anyway, regardless, so I've watched a couple of other, like Robert Kiyosaki, and there's another guru out there that's self-directed IRA. That these are some awesome things to look at. So can you just give a quick rundown, let's start with first, the traditional people, the traditional real estate investing, buying investment properties, rental properties, is, you find your traditional mortgage, you put 20% down, and you own the home. Maybe you put it into an LLC after you close, because you get everything under your personal, right? Which I did find out that, it can, in some cases, get called due, that mortgage called due, if they put it in an LLC after the fact.
Yeah. Yeah.
But generally speaking, it's very, very uncommon for it to happen. And most of the time, why people doing it is literally to protect themselves.
Yeah.
In case, I know people that have 3, 4, 10 properties, and they'll have a different LLC for each property.
Yes.
Because if something happens with that property, a fire, they can't take down your whole portfolio.
Right, exactly. That's a good point.
Or your own personal, so that's a big one. And, a lot of people get into this, they start on these investment sides. And we got a bulldog here today that wants to play. So he hasn't played with that toy forever, but I do apologize. Anyway, so that's a traditional sense, right? Hey, I'm going to go in. I'm talking to Brandon myself. I do it all the time, and we do 20% down. And that's great for the people that are going to be really hands-on.
Yeah.
You're going to maintain the property, you're going to put sweat equity in, you're going to do all this other stuff. Because I did look at some of the pros and cons of the self-directed IRA.
Yes.
If you're going to do that, it needs to be completely passive.
Yes, it has to be all within your IRA. So that means that you purchase it with cash. So then you don't have those tax benefits. You don't have the insurance benefits that, things that you can depreciate right off for tax purposes.
Right.
However, you do need to have everything within the IRA. So if you're going to purchase a fix and flip type of property, which you do have to use an investment, you can't build a new house with your IRA. You can't, live in the home. It's not for your own personal enjoyment. It is an investment property. Any updates, anything, revenue, expenses, all has to be done within that IRA. So it may not be...
Because it's a tax shelter.
Yes.
That's why.
Yep, it's
right?
tax. Yep.
So that's why it's passive. So that's, these are really great programs for people that are not looking to use that money as income to live, right?
Right.
But let's just say you have a good job and you're able to live off all this. You have a great IRA or 401k that you can roll into it, and then you can use that money, right?
Yes. Yep. And you're limited at how much you can contribute every year. So this year it's 6,500. If you're over 50, it's 7,500. So if you have to put money in that to pay for expenses on that property, you're going to get penalized for that. So you need to have a healthy and full IRA before you really start going into it. So that's why it's good to meet with people, talk about the pros and the cons. It is a great way to kind of think more about investing in your retirement. You know, so there's a lot of ways to invest in passive income that you're getting monthly, so while you're sleeping you're just making money, and then there's ways to build generational wealth, retirement wealth, so it's another avenue to try.
And again, and that's what that's what this was so exciting today to have you on, because you know, we talk about all the traditional ways, and then this is just this, you know, people do know about this, but it's not as common, right? So how does it work? And maybe, you know, so let's say somebody has $150,000 in a 401k. Can they roll that straight into it? Because you're not just opening a new one and putting 6,500. You can't keep doing that, right? So so you'll need to get a custodian, so an IRA, and they're a self-directed IRA custodian, and then we can certainly get you resources. So if there's any listeners that would like that, I do spend a lot of time interviewing and creating a power team so that I have resources that I trust and I personally know that I can help you with. So that would be the first step, is that to reach out to one of them. There are fees associated with their work, of course. However, they're the gurus. They're the ones that are the experts. They're going to help you with any like our IRS types of questions, tax questions, any of the contracts, paperwork, things like that. So that would be, as far as like your first step, you would reach out to one of us. We would get you in contact with one of them, and then once you have that process started and they roll it over into your self-directed IRA, then we can talk about shopping, and we talk about, on the realtor side, what things you need to look out for. You know, maybe while we're viewing a property, I'm able to give them insight on, you know, now let's look at the cost of what these repairs are going to be. Do you have the funds in your IRA to do that? So is this the property for you? So you really need a real estate agent that's going to be an investor savvy real estate agent that knows the steps ahead. Because as a buyer, you walk in and you see the 50-foot view, what's in front of you, and I'm the realtor up here 50,000 foot looking down saying, think about this, you know, and then we work together with that person. So that's awesome. Now, is this, and correct me if I'm wrong, you can also do a combination of private lending with it, right?
Yes, you can.
So, and that's because, you know, you may be looking at a fix and flip, and it's, you know, let's say you have $200,000, $300,000 in this account that you can use, but let's say you only have $50,000. Can you now get private lending to go in addition?
You can, yes. So you can mix products like that.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's something you would want to consult with multiple people. So your custodian, you would want to consult with your loan officer. Usually the realtor's involved as well. They're not usually making any decisions. And a full disclaimer, I am not an attorney. I am not giving any advice at all. However, I've worked with a client that has done it. And so I have a personal story as on the realtor side and on the buy side. So as long as you have the right, combination of team, you can really do that. You can do that with, most of the time people purchase it with an LLC. So then a realtor needs to know what is on that contract, who is the name signing it, what does it say? Because it's not just, Matt Smith or whoever, it's your LLC entity. So your title team also needs to understand that. So there's a lot of people that you need to have in this process.
Yeah, and to those of you all out there, to understand this from as simple as a level as possible. This is, again, strictly for passive income, right?
Yep, you can't live in the
tax
properties.
Sheltered. You can't live in the properties. You have to do everything by the book. You have to make sure, like, you can't go in if they got plumbing issue. You can't go fix it yourself.
Nope.
You have to hire
good point.
licensed and bonded people. But again, this is to really protect. This is to grow your portfolio, protect your money, and from tax. It's a tax shelter, is what it is. And buying property, you kind of duplicate the tax shelter for that property as well. So it's your income that you're doing for passive. So if it's not for everybody that wants to build a portfolio and live off of that money. This is for people this is for your retirement, that down the road when you're going to, when we retire, and then you're going to be able to pull that money out or create, like I said, generational wealth, right? So this is another avenue to being a property, investor, build your portfolio. It's just another avenue to do it. So it works out really, some of the research I did, it really works out great for people that, have their full salaries and can completely live on this, and they don't have the time. So, let's just throw this out, like a doctor. Let's say a doctor, they don't really want to go and replace carpet. They just want to buy properties, and they have this money, and they can utilize these tax shelters and utilize this program and and essentially it's kind of you get this property management, and then they do everything, right? So you're essentially just doing it that way. So that's I think one of the biggest things that I had seen from it, but it's still a fantastic way to grow your wealth.
Yeah, the money's just sitting there, right? And if you look at the opposite, what are people saying about investing in stocks and bonds right now? They're not happy with how things are performing. So my passion is to get out there and help people do more with their money, get more cash on cash return, and really build it.
Right. And if we look over the last 30 years, what is the average return on a home? It's 4%. But now if we take that and look at it in the market, we've had some big years in the market, but you have some huge losses in the market too. Yeah. So over time, by being able to do this, and specifically from a tax sheltered savings, it's great. And then just kind of looking where we are at right now, what are properties values going to do over the next 30 years?
That's a good point. Exactly. Right. So it's not likely that they're going to depreciate, with history repeating itself most times. Right. So it really is, and I truly believe, I know you do, that investing in real estate is the most lucrative.
It's built the most wealth, period. There, you can put. I did a first time home buyer event last week with a team from Keller Williams, and not to be throwing other names out there, but we looked at if you were to be a renter, right, and put all of your money, like all of your available money outside of your bills, into like an IRA or to 401k, like. Into this money market accounts, and look at it what it is going to be in 20 years versus buying a home. Yeah. Right? And it was like $400,000 difference in like 8 years.
Yeah,
of
that's
wealth.
Impressive.
Right? So just by buying a home, instead of, because if you take it, we were looking at, if you're going to be a lifetime renter, what is your net worth going to be, in 8, 10, 12, 20 years? And it was amazing, the difference and how fast it is by owning a home. So, that's just going back to on the low level primary residence. Now we're talking about investment properties and building portfolios. And it was interesting because we had another person in that class that night, and he's like, he had read Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, and he's like, okay, so I want to buy my first property, and I want it to be a duplex. I'm going to rent out the other side, and then every 2 years I want to buy another multi-family home, and and that is amazing. It's harder to do the older you get if you have family, kids, and whatnot. But if you're young, like he was 23 years old. And that's what he's like, I'm going to do this. And I've had a number of clients over the years where I've done that as well. And I remember one client, he bought his first house, I think it was 2015. It was a 4-bedroom, rented out 3 of the rooms for $500 a piece. Okay. Or like 400 to 5, somewhere around there. It was a nice home. And so his mortgage payment was like $1,700 to begin with. So he was he was paying $200 rent. Well, he did that for 2 years, bought another primary residence with 5% down, And last I knew, he was buying a 20-unit apartment building.
Nice.
And he's 29 like now. It's
and
crazy.
this is called house hacking.
This is house hacking, right? Now he was willing.
Yeah.
He was willing to live with roommates, use the same kitchen, and for like the first 3 houses, right? Before he, before he finally got into that.
And I like that you bring that up, because I have talked to my most recent client that you will have to be a little uncomfortable for a little while.
Right.
So we talked about this. So he came to me, and one point too I want to say is don't discount the dream. So when my client came to me and said, I want to own a resort someday, I was like, okay, let's do this. So we sat down. He has a single family home that he will be selling, and he'll be purchasing a duplex and rent the other side out. He'll be purchasing 3 total properties this year, hold them for a couple of years, and liquidate, and then he'll be able to purchase his resort in 4 to 5 years, with the idea that he will not have to work again. And this person is about 38 years old, so he will be retiring in about 4 to 5 years. So don't ever discount the dream.
No.
They really, if people come to you and they're like, this is what I want to do, really empower them. And also with first-time home buyers, I love to empower them and say, you are now investing in real estate. If you own a piece of real estate, if you invest with your 401k, your IRA, you are an investor now.
And let's start with, there's been some of my clients where we started with no money.
Yes.
And we started, and we got like down payment assistance from Minnesota Housing. Sellers paid closing costs. I realize some of this stuff is hard today to get sellers to pay closing costs.
I've got it though. I've got one on Friday, $9,000 in closing costs.
Nice work. And I just wanted to put a disclaimer out there, because it doesn't happen all the time. But it is. Last year it didn't happen at all. This last 6 months, we've definitely had that change. But we started with literally a couple grand out of pocket, and bought the house. It was completely turnkey ready, so you could live in it. But they took the carpet out, hardwood floors, they redid the bathrooms, and they updated the kitchen, and then they sold it 2 years later, right? And paid off that down payment assistance loan with the sale. But now they had their own money to go 10% down on the next property, right? So it's when we house hacked sometimes, because a lot of times people, I want to build my portfolio. It's like, okay, you might buy that first house. If you can fix it up and build, get it to where you want it to be, and then sell that to liquidate, and now you have those funds. Now you can get into that next house on a bigger level. But then eventually you're able to start having enough money aside to rent that next house out.
Yep, exactly.
And now you have 2 homes. You buy your primary, you have that, and then eventually you keep growing that. But that first home, you were able to liquidate, use that money to set up the next series of homes. So it's not always, if it works great, if you are able to save the money and do that 5% down next home, it's not not even a problem, right?
Right. I am a proponent of doing less down, so you have more money in your pocket for repairs. And expenses. And the other thing too is, if you do start with that, it's good to connect with a loan officer right away, because the types of loan products you use and what step you go is very important. Because if you're doing FHA loan first or second, it may, with your income that you're getting from the property, it may put you over the limit. So you do need to be careful about what loan products you use. So that's another reason, even early on, to reach out to your professionals and really get a plan in place. And we don't discount your dreams. So we're going to talk to you about 100%. How to get there, and really, the fastest way, because obviously we want you to be living on the beach or wherever you want to be. Well, money's just coming in, that's the life we want.
Absolutely. There's a lot of ways to buy real estate, and we do run across having getting into these investors where they have these, come to this class, we'll show you how to do zero down and all of this, pay us $5,000 and we'll show you how to do it, right? And what are your thoughts on that? Like, have you been in those classes? Have you seen them?
Yes, and I think it's a very good idea for anybody that has a curiosity with investment to check it out, because
Yes.
you will feel a culture. There's an energy there. Sometimes it's not for me, but there are some people that it might work for.
Yeah.
However, I don't know that it's absolutely necessary in my opinion. But you need to know, like you
Right.
need to have a general background of what those are, because you're going to get your clients coming to you saying, hey, I just went to this class, is it a good deal to pay 10 grand to this person? And you're going to go, I do not recommend that.
Right.
That seems a little steep,
Right.
So I think, yeah, you're
Yeah,
right.
because I mean, what they're doing is literally you're just putting a whole group of people together to buy properties.
Yeah.
Is what it really comes down
Usually,
to,
yeah.
right?
And they call it sometimes syndication, where you can go in as a group. There's a lot of, benefits, pros and cons to that. So I think if you're ever looking into doing that, just to have a conversation. There's a lot of resources out there too. I know Bigger Pockets is a good one. A lot of people look up data on like AirDNA. I work with a lot of short-term rental clients, and so there's a lot of resources out there, and people will come to you and they will have the research done and they'll ask for your opinion. So I think it's good for you as a professional, me as a professional too, to really have the education.
Well, absolutely, and because I've seen some of them, and there's a wide range.
Yes.
Of good ones and not so good ones, and like just give us a bunch of money and we'll handle it. But there's I can't think of it right now. I'm seeing I'm kind of part of the group on LinkedIn. JT Fox, I believe, is the one who puts it on, where they actually do. Jennifer Green, that's local here.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
she's been great into it, and it's, but it really does. Like, hey, we're gonna bring together a project, so you can get all these other investors involved if you want to do a fix and flip that way too.
Yes.
So let's just say, hey, we found a home for 200 grand. I have 50,000, and you got 6 or 7 other people put the rest of the money to buy it as cash, and we're gonna flip it in 90 days. I think you have to have an idea of plans, what we're going to sell it for.
Yeah.
And then each one of these investors that put money in, and 90 days later, they're getting a check, for, let's say they put 50 grand in, and they get a check for another 7, 8 grand, right?
Yeah.
Because, they're 3 months, they made $8,000 by just sending some money over. So they get some big groups together.
Yeah.
And so forth. So there's that way as well.
Yeah.
In getting into those other groups.
Yeah, and also if you do, usually they have a really good realtor that's going to do ahead of time a pro forma. That's usually what I call it, where you take the numbers and you look at it and you talk about your cash on cash, your rate.
Getting into those other groups.
Yeah, and also if you do, usually they have a really good realtor that's going to do ahead of time a pro forma. That's usually what I call it, where you take the numbers and you look at it and you talk about your cash on cash, your rate of return, your cap rate. We look at the taxes, we look at the expenses, we look at all of the things. If the first time person, maybe they're going to be doing the property management themselves.
Right.
Maybe they will be hiring it out. So there's a couple different strategies depending on where you're at with your portfolio, how new you are to it. There's a lot of resources out there. So property management softwares versus like a person that does property management. So there's a lot that goes into when you purchase a property. So you really need to have a good idea of what your goal is. So if your goal is to have a really high cash on cash return, you may look at a different property than something that, so it just kind of depends on what the goal is.
Right. That's, again, starting with the professionals talking to you. What is your what is your goal? You're trying to build a portfolio. Do you want to do fix and flips? I've come across over the years, and this is the Bulldog, this is Maverick, everyone. So brought him today. Now he's typically sleeping around this time, but now he wants to be a part
He's a
of the
good boy.
conversation. Anyway, talking with you as what their idea is. Who did I run across recently? I did probably 50, 60 flips, and I own 40 other properties. So sometimes these people, they keep them to rent, so they have the cash flow, and then the other properties they identify, and it's like, hey, this is one that we are going to flip.
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
or sometimes I hear people that say, I really just want to get like a 20% return on my money, or I'm looking to get this. And I say, okay, well, maybe, purchasing vacant land lots, would be a better option using your IRA. So that's another thing that I help clients with. There's a webinar also, so if any listeners are interested in doing that, where you can take your 401k, roll it over to a self-directed IRA, and purchase vacant land lots. And I have limited, I have a waiting list for that, but we can get the webinar information.
That would be fantastic for all you out here. You need to speak with Candice, because she's got more knowledge than I do. I'm on the mortgage end, of course. We want to finance all the homes, right? So we're getting a little bit away from where that is. So that's not necessarily my wheelhouse, knowing all these self-directed IRA programs and how to do this. But it's very good for me to know, because I will have, I do have doctors, I do have people buying properties, and they have additional resources to do this and so forth. But if you do it right, house hacking, it doesn't take long to get to that next level.
No, it really could be a matter of about 2 years, like really 2 to 3 years, depending on how much you have available for funds.
Sure.
And what if you're using an IRA, if you have a lot in an IRA or something like that. But yeah, it really doesn't take very long. And if you have somebody that is really savvy and passionate about it, they're like myself, I spend a lot of time every day building relationships with people. So I have vendors, I call property management software like Evolve, and I have, relationships with those people. So if somebody comes to me and they say, hey, I own a Airbnb, a short-term rental property, and we're having issues with, we call them NIMBYs, not in my backyard. Yeah. So they're like, there's noise complaints. Well, I have, there's a software little thing you can put in the property that will notify you if the decibels go too high, to kind of help prevent some of those things.
Contacted it. Hey, you're having a party there.
There might be something going on over there.
Right,
so, there are ways to, I think people get a little concerned about that when they're like, well, but I've heard all these horror stories and things like that. So a lot of my investors come to me, and what do they want to know? They want to know, how do I stay protected, and where are the deals? That's what they want to know. So I have a lot of relationships with insurance agents, and I call them and I say, what about loss of income? My client, if they have something happen and they can't rent their property for 6 months, I need to make sure that they have coverage for this.
Right.
So I'm an agent that's out there gathering information, building relationships. Sometimes my insurance agents are like, I would love to get a discount, for people that come from you, if I can help them with these things,
That's awesome.
So, there is a lot of benefits to that, but you have to partner with an agent that I think is out there doing that. They're asking specific questions.
Right.
What happens if a natural disaster comes? Sure. Do they have coverage for this? Do they have this coverage? Do they have that coverage? What about a fix and flip property? Do they ever have coverage on that? Well, I have an insurance agent that has a 3-month insurance coverage for those clients. So it's not always about just how to do it, but it's more about the resources.
Number one, it's always the resources, period, right? You can have the knowledge, but you don't want to be scrambling last minute to try to get this stuff set up. So, talking to someone like yourself that has those resources, has that knowledge, has worked in the Airbnb field, with other investors, to understand that. I always, because a lot of people will come and be like, okay, I'm a rent out. If I just rent out this property, and okay, do you realize what comes with it, right?
Yeah.
How are you gonna find the renter?
Yep.
I'm gonna put someone on Craigslist, on Facebook, or Marketplace, whatever. Okay, so you'll be able to look at their credit. Well, there's different resources out there to do that.
Yeah.
But there's people that they don't have the time, they
Yep.
don't have the skill sets to be able to handle all that.
Yep.
Right? So there's the property management companies where they will, like me personally, would be probably because of time constraints more than anything.
Yep.
Is just like, here, manage this, make sure that there's always somebody in there, and make sure I know what's going on. And, and I got to take it out of my cash flow for it to happen, but it's, in the grand scheme of things, it's way worth my time and money.
Also, it's an expense, right? So that's a
taxable event, right?
Yeah.
So there's just so many different ways to invest in the real estate, from primary residence, first-time home buyers to, building a big portfolio. A lot of people with these Airbnbs, on the lending side, it's like, hey, this one's gonna Airbnb, somewhere between $6,000 and $8,000 a month in income. It's like, well, we can't use that necessarily because it's not guaranteed. There's no leases. There's, but now you get a Schedule E over a couple of years, and it shows that. And now we're using that income from that Schedule E.
Right.
We can't use it as like, hey, I'm gonna Airbnb this, and it's gonna make this money.
Right. Yeah. And I have that conversation all the time. It's very common. Almost everybody is worried about that. Like, how am I going to get a renter in? How am I going to do property management? And you'll have to leverage whatever you have. If you have time, you're going to leverage your time. If you have money, you're going to leverage your money and have something else do it. So those are conversations I have all the time. And I just kind of ask them, like, what is your goal? What do you love to do? How can you do more of what you love to do? That's what I want to do. I want to do that for my own business, and I do. I put that on my schedule first. Vacations go on the schedule first, and so I truly believe that a lot of people now. I'm a millennial, but I think a lot of people, millennials, are purchasing these short-term rental properties mostly for their own enjoyment, and then they're just reaping the benefit of all this passive income because somebody can outperform. I do a napkin pitch is what I call it. So I'll have like a long-term rental and what you can make, and that's as much as you can make minus your expenses.
Right.
And then versus, let's say you just have 165 days, right? And it's usually a difference of $30,000 to $40,000, right? And then you tell that person, okay, so that's your short-term rental. That means you have 200 days still in that year that you can use it for your own enjoyment.
Correct.
You can also, a lot of times I talk to people about using it for charity. So there's a lot of charities where you could give away a week at your, so there's so much good that you can do with properties.
Awesome.
It also creates a lot of jobs too. So you need cleaners, you need to buy linens and blankets. And a lot of times, when we consult with people on their, like if their short-term rental's not doing well, they're not getting bookings, we talk about, what are you providing for value to your customers? And sometimes it's partnering with a local, coffee shop to have local coffee there. So you really kind of, build up the economy in a sense.
And so in Candice, we were speaking the other day, you had mentioned like you have contacts kind of all over, right? It's like they're kind of in the southeast where like you've done some Airbnbs around are like where just for everybody, if they want to contact you, like, hey, I want to buy it. An Airbnb in Missouri, I want to buy it.
So that's a good point. Yeah, so I'm part of the Whirly Real Estate Network. So the headquarters are in Branson, Missouri. And so we have agents that are all throughout the states. And so we have somebody in upstate New York, we have the Carolinas, we have Oklahoma, I'm here in Minnesota. So a lot of us on the team, we're spending time and we're, networking with people that are looking for emerging markets. So places like Duluth in Minnesota is not an emerging market.
Right.
There's restrictions, moratoriums, there's, but for good reason, because we need to keep housing affordable in Minnesota.
Right.
So you go right across the river into Superior and it's wide open,
Right.
It's a great
so
market.
That knowledge, right?
So you need to really know. So that's what the best part is about our, network, is that we can connect you into emerging areas that are really performing well. And we have data tools that are proprietary. So we have partnered with somebody who created a software that's better than AirDNA. You can underwrite properties, you can add in amenities, you can look at saturation and some of the other data tools.
Yeah.
So if anybody's interested in really getting down to business and looking at the numbers, I truly believe real estate will be data driven in the future.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's from everything that we collect to from appraised values to every part of it is all data, right? So you look at an appraisal, how many pages is that? 36 pages.
Yep.
All that data is going into Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. So we know where our values are. Desktop appraisals have started becoming more of a thing, just simply because if the house is sold recently, we have the data. They do a drive-by, make sure it didn't burn down. So it's still there, but they're not necessarily going into the property.
Yeah, right. That is the downfall of that.
Right. So, there's some lending things that we have to worry about on that end, but regardless, as you are correct on the data. You also mentioned something about saturation. So, like in Duluth, it's saturated to the point where they won't allow any more Airbnbs in there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and we have places locally here like Maple Grove where you cannot.
Right.
And I know that they extended that so that it's not going to be lifted this summer or anything like that. But yeah, it's for a good reason though, because we really do need to make sure that we're keeping it affordable.
Correct, because that's part of the problem we do have is the supply issue, right? Our number one problem right now is the supply issue, more than even the interest rates and everything else.
Yeah.
Interest rates are going to vary. It's a lot easier to go down, like for us to work with interest rates than it is for us to can't just build new houses.
Right.
If builders don't build $200,000 houses, they can't make it if they did that, right?
Yeah.
The cost of supplies, you just can't do it. The land, the supplies, and everything else that goes into it, they cannot make a brand new home for $200,000, right? So that's why the new homes are $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 plus.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of multifamily developers, so they buy two, triplexes or 3 units, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which helps alleviate those costs because we have 3 units you can rent out too if you buy them, right?
Yeah.
But that's that supply issue, and where we need first-time homes. We need them for first-time home buyers, right?
Yeah.
And it's I was talking with a client yesterday, and we're just putting a plan in place to get her first home, right? And she's like, if I would have just did this 2 years ago, when rates were lower, I could do it. I'm like, yes, it is, but if we keep this path, we'll within 1 year, you'll be buying your home, even if rates stay the same today.
Yeah.
Rates drop, which we anticipate by the end of the year, or even maybe by this fall or summer, we could see rates sliding downwards. But I think the foreseeable future, the Fed is always looking in the rearview mirror. They're going to raise rates again in May. So
I know. I hear that big CPI report's coming out on May 10th.
May 10th, that's
the
the
big
number
day.
one. But
so.
I was actually watching Barry Habib just before he got here today.
He's great.
And looking at just history and where they should have stopped, where they should have stopped buying bonds, right?
Yeah.
Which is 6 months into 2020, about 6 months after COVID,
okay.
because if they would have stopped there when the inflation, really the inflection point was the inflation. When inflation started going up in 2021, that's when they should have absolutely put the brakes on it and started raising rates slowly, because that would have curbed our inflation from going too high. Instead, they kept the foot on the gas, kept the rates super low while inflation went, and then they said it was transitory. Right?
Yeah.
Again, this is the Fed always looking at just data from 2 months ago and not looking at, Barry today literally said, one of Wayne Gretzky's best lines is, a good hockey player skates to where the puck is. A great one skates where it's going to be.
Right.
And the Fed does not follow that at all.
No, my coach actually says, she goes, if you're looking in the rear view mirror, just think about how little it is compared to the windshield, where you're going. You're not going backwards.
Well, and that's bringing the, right now in the mortgage industry and the real estate side, if you turn the news on, what do you have?
I know.
Just negativity across the board. Well, we have to, we are the ones on the front lines. We have to get our message out to be like, it's not. It's not this way. It's not that way. People are doing this. Right now, the current crisis is, that the low level pricing adjustment for higher credit scores. That is the nonstop every single day for the last week, because every single news source, social media, it's all over it.
Yeah.
And realistically, the current administration, they did subsidize the lower end by the higher end range, right?
Yeah.
Realistically, this low level pricing actually has been in the market already for 45 days. They're saying it's starting on May 1st. This pricing has already taken place.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things, it's not huge. It makes a lot of people upset. It looks really bad. This whole stigma thing, and it looks terrible. But it is trying to help the people with the lower scores get into housing, right? Because that, again, building housing, building wealth and so forth. But, overall market is still healthy.
Yes.
It's still not what they, you still have to tell people it's not going to crash. It's,
Right.
we don't hold a crystal ball. Could have crashed? Absolutely. But it's that is probably going to have to be some major event.
Right.
And
I agree.
unemployment that reaches into the teens. And, and then further inflation or further this and further that for it to happen. Because, realistically, the 08 crash, builders just went bankrupt and broke and didn't build any houses.
Mm-hmm.
And it took years before they started building houses, and they started building, I think, almost like 2018, 2019.
Uh-huh.
And then you took a drop back as soon as COVID hit,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So if we were to build at the levels of 2019, maybe even 2020, if I remember the chart, we have to build for like 18 years.
Yeah, I was
to
going to
get
say
to a
it's over
supply
10 years, right?
to get to a supply that would be an even supply of homes versus.
Yeah.
So, and I always bring it back to when 08 crashed, the supply was already almost 6 months of
Yeah.
homes. It was 23,000 homes on the market, and then crash happened, and then 10,000 foreclosures hit. Now we're at 33,000 homes, and now we're sitting literally at like 8,000 homes in a prime market.
Yeah.
In prime time. So if we added 10,000 homes, it would certainly help.
Yeah, but it just wouldn't be enough.
It wouldn't be
Yeah,
enough.
we can't do it fast enough.
Correct,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah. And I think too, with the heat map that they have out for those LLPAs, there are solutions
Right.
to any problem. So we focus on those solutions and we'll,
Right.
get you to where you need to go comfortably.
Correct. It is what it is. It's, it does adjust for how much money you're putting down and some other things. But,
Yeah.
we also advise a lot of times, not doing the 20% down.
I know,
the 10%
right?
down.
Yep.
Keeping that other 10% in the bank for repairs or whatever else, or just, putting it in that money market account where that will make you
Yep.
more money than what the mortgage insurance costs.
Yep, exactly.
Mortgage insurance. So one of the good things that happened in 08, or that came, I shouldn't say good things, but one of the things that was a result of the crash is that they made all the mortgage insurance companies have billions of dollars of cash. I believe it had to be like, you have to have $2 billion of cash on hand. Well, what happened after that when value started going back up and nobody was foreclosing and nothing was happening? Well, these mortgage insurance policies weren't paying out, so they had tons of cash on hand. So then they started, well, we got to be competitive with the next guy.
Yeah.
Again, this is where capitalism takes over. Like, okay, if Arch needs to be lower than Radian, what are their numbers at? So the cost of mortgage insurance, has come down dramatically.
Yeah, that's true.
FHA just reduced it from 0.85% annually to 0.55% annually.
Okay.
So, like a $300,000 mortgage is $100 less a month.
Yeah,
Right?
that's a good savings.
I'm just doing some rough math, don't hold me to that. But it's huge savings for that first time home buyer. Right?
Yeah.
And then if you've got a high credit score and you got a low debt to income, 10% down. I've seen people with a $350,000 loan amount with like a $50 a month mortgage insurance payment. It's like, well, we got to put 20% down. What do you do?
Right.
The payment's a little bit more, but if you put that 10%, that other 10% into the money market, or you keep it on cash, maybe you are going to put that towards your next home, and maybe you can work on getting to the self-directed IRA with that money.
Right,
So,
right. Or even purchasing vacant land or like a recreational land, things like that
Right,
too. So
right.
there's a lot
to
of
start
options.
your passive.
Right, exactly.
Yes. Okay, so we talked a lot about investing in real estate. What else do you love to do? So your previous life was a vet tech, right?
Right.
Right. You were in the.
Yeah, so I was a vet tech for 20 years. I've done a lot of different jobs. So I worked in emergency starting out. I went and rescued Hurricane Katrina animals after that relief. And then also I worked for poison control. So I handled, emergency situations and and people that were kind of going through really scary times. So I've handled a lot of that. I was a practice manager for a couple hospitals in Minneapolis and New Brighton. So, I've done a lot of different jobs, which has really helped me in my field now, just because sometimes, people have animals, most times they do, and there's things that also translate. So while you're moving, your animal might be stressed, and there's been times where I've been able to talk about things like pheromones in the home or some other things that people just don't know about.
Most agents are going to talk about that.
Yeah, or like, what do I do with my dog when I have showings? Or what do I do, like, can I leave my cat out? Or, things like that. And so there are things that just coincide. Or when you're purchasing a property, sometimes you need a fenced-in yard for your dog, or you want to be close to dog parks or a vet clinic or something where, it's maybe you want to be in a neighborhood or an area of Minneapolis that's really big into, dogs in general. So like Hops and Hounds is a really cool place if you haven't heard of that, where it's a brewery and a dog park. Yeah, really cool place. So I think in Minnesota we have a lot of, we're very dog friendly here. So it comes into play a lot. And then also with my short-term clients, if they're owning Airbnbs, I almost always recommend that they make it pet friendly, because first of all, there's going to be a lot more people that are going to come, and usually you get better bookings that way. There are some restrictions or things that maybe other realtors wouldn't think about, but me being in the veterinary field, that I can say, hey, it might not be a good idea to allow this to happen, because dogs in their nature are going to pee on things, or they're going to do this, or cats are going to scratch on things, So just knowing ahead of time, what could happen to help protect your client. And if they know that, dogs could do this, well, they have the proper insurance and they're covered and they're fine,
Right.
A lot of times those clients too they're not so emotionally attached to the properties because they don't use them as their primary residence,
Right.
So they're kind of a little bit more detached from it. And also, in my previous life, I wrote blogs and things about safety, like boat safety for dogs, firework safety. Like, what do you do if your dog eats a firework?
Right.
Oh my gosh,
Right.
Or sometimes you take them on a vacation and something happens, like an emergency situation. So I've had people call me and they're like, I know you're a realtor, but can you help me? My dog just cut his leg,
Sure.
So I get those calls all the time. And it really kind of all fits in with what I'm doing now, One of my charities that's near and dear to my heart is Alexander House in Minnesota. They're a domestic violence shelter. They provide other resources, not only for women, for men, elderly, children, things like that. And so I'm working on a project to have an animal shelter for people to go if they need to, escape, and they have to have their animals with them. So really excited to bring
that. You had mentioned that the other day, and I was just going to bring that up. I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
Because that's amazing.
Yeah.
Because, if you have somebody that's, that their dog is their support.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And they can't go into these shelters and not have their dog, right?
Yeah.
Or they can, but if you can provide a shelter that allows them to bring their dogs in,
Yeah.
or their pets in, whatever it is, that's amazing to me. That sounds like I was super interested. I'm super excited for you on that.
Yeah, the workshop is tomorrow.
Oh,
it's don't forget the pets. And one thing I like to point out about that is that animals are also victims of domestic violence. If you're in an environment where people are throwing things and it's scary and loud, that's scary to them. They feel that, or sometimes they can be injured themselves. A lot of times when people leave, they can be used as retaliation, and sometimes people will retaliate onto the pets if they don't take them with them. So it can be very dangerous if they're left behind, and that is my mission. And I heard a statistic from them, so I haven't fact-checked this, but they say that there's only 15% of the domestic violence shelters in the whole United States that have accommodations for people to bring their pets. So that means there's an 85% group of people out there that need me to come in and really help make this possible.
That's not a small number. I mean,
No.
whether you fact check that or not, that's not a small number, even if it's 20 or 25. It's still,
Right.
That's a large. I mean, again, it's domestic violence. I mean, that creates PTSD. I mean, but if you are able to bring your dog and your pet with you, it's because I think there's got to be people that just stay in those situations because, oh, it's too much, I can't leave.
I was that person. And that's what led me to this mission, because I knew with my background in veterinary medicine, I'm a public speaker, I'm in real estate, and I'm the one. So things all happen for you to really be able to do it.
I wish you the best on that path, and I look forward to hearing more.
Yeah, we'll chat about it because it's going to be cool. But it's amazing how the things that you go through in life really lead you up to that. So here I am talking about investing with
Right.
your IRA and how to invest using, your IRA into vacant land and all these other ways that you can, just
Right.
maximize your money, and not pay as much tax. It all kind of comes from your history and what
Yeah.
you've been doing.
Well,
so.
and you, it was 2019 is when you got licensed. Right?
Yeah, Q4 of 19.
So you're not even literally 4 years into this, and you've created a very, very good portfolio of your own.
Yeah.
Client
yeah.
success rates. I've been watching. I mean, I'm glad we were able to connect. We connected over social media.
Yes.
And it's been amazing, and I look forward to your future, your success, and maybe we can have more of these down the road. But yeah, everybody that's listening, please reach out to Candice. We'll have her information and so forth. She's amazing. I was so excited to bring her on for this podcast.
Oh, I'm honored. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Anyway, like and subscribe. Reach out with any questions you have. And for now, thank you